Hello and welcome to a week 9 edition of the Bleacher Report Fantasy Football Show. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by Michael Leone as we get set for Bills Chiefs game of the year. Will you be at the game on Sunday, Leone?
I won't be smashing tables at the game on Sunday. I'm getting older. I gotta save these bullets for playoff time.
Very much looking forward to Chiefs Bills. Should be a good one. The highlight here of week 9. On today's show, we're going to talk about some guys that you may be thinking about starting in your fantasy leagues here in week 9 that we think could underperform or have some bust potential here in week 9. Also, if you have questions for us, you're welcome to put those in the chat. We'll get to as many of those as we can, as long as they are normal human questions and not psycho, irrational questions. All right, Leone. No reason to dilly dally. Let's get into the list here. First player who could underperform here in week 9, we're going to go with Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Now, you see how Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt can fail, right? He's done it a few times recently. It's not that he's not that good of a player or anything like that. It's that he is not their passing back. And so when they fall behind, you see a lot of Jerry McNichols. And even on base downs, he's not getting much of a passing role. So what he needs is touchdowns, which have been hard to come by lately for the Commanders and could be hard to come by against the Seattle defense, or big plays, which that's always in the bag for JCM. Break off a 40-yard run, break off a 50-yard touchdown run, right? So I think you it could be worse for JCM, but this is not the spot where I'd be like, yeah, let me get him into my lineup. So, Leone, what do you think about JCM's recent play and his outlook here in this game?
Yeah, I mean the recent play is just indicative of what we're going to see moving forward, which is boom or bust. On the plus side for him, you do have a high team total for Washington this week. They're 3-point favorites, and you're going to need him in those positive game scripts where he can rack up rushing volume, hopefully get some efficiency and some touchdown equity from an advantageous position. But Seattle is a matchup. We have them, when you adjust for the strength of opposition, the second toughest team in terms of yards per carry allowed in the NFL, which doesn't, look good for JCM from an efficiency perspective. That flows through to touchdowns as well. We have them inflating opposition pass TD rate and deflating opposition rush TD rate. And the one spot where you do get back fantasy points against Seattle at the running back position is they kind of do funnel targets to the running back position. But as you noted, he's not the pass down back there. On any given week, especially if they're trailing, Jeremy McNichols is going to out route JCM from the running back position. So he doesn't really kind of even get back, the fantasy value that other running backs do against Seattle to make up for, a tough efficiency matchup. I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
The Seattle D is coming out of a bye here this week, which I think will allow their defense to get healthy. Their defense was banged up before the bye, and I do think when they're all healthy, they do have a pretty good defense here. Let's go to our number 5 player. Going to be a controversial one here, Leone, when we might have to ask Microsoft Copilot for some advice. It's going to be Travis Kelce. So everyone was watching the game on Monday night when Travis Kelce just got loose. I mean, real loose. And I was honestly surprised by that because my take was that where Rashee Rice does his damage, where he runs his routes, is historically where Travis Kelce has done most of his damage. And you also see around the red zone where they're just relentlessly targeting Rashee Rice at this point. And that was a lot of what Travis Kelce used to get his points from. So I think that there's a floor here on Travis Kelce that people don't realize how low it is. Now, this is a big game for them. And if you wanted to argue with me, hey, this is a huge game for them. They're going to go full blast on Travis Kelce. I could buy that. But look back at the playoffs last year. He had plenty of bad games there also. So, Leone, what do you think about and Mr. Copilot, what do you think about Travis Kelce?
Yeah, ask the co-pilot how many tight ends have scored 15 or more fantasy points against the Bills in a single game this season. The answer is zero tight ends have scored 15 or more PPR points in a single game against the Buffalo Bills defense. Now, those results also line up with kind of our advanced stats at the tight end position. Over at ETR, we have a defense first position that factors in who they've played, and we have the Bills as the stingiest defense in terms of fantasy points allowed to the position. So it just isn't that they haven't allowed one big game. All in all, we have them as the toughest matchup. Now, sometimes that stuff can be a little bit fluky. They are a defense that forces, targets underneath. So I can see a situation where, no Isaiah Pacheco, Casey drops back to pass a ton, and maybe you do get some underneath routes to Travis Kelsey. But the Bills defense really does tend to funnel those more to the running back position than to the tight end position underneath. And if they are able to do that again against KC, as you mentioned, with the target share competition increasing. I think Xavier Worthy is going to have some better games than he's had the last couple of weeks. Rashee Rice, obviously the clear one there, has established that immediately upon returning from injury. It could be a low volume game for Kelsey.
All right. Yeah, like to me, I know some people probably out there probably have a Rondé Gadsden, like not even a question. But there's like worse tight ends that I think are better plays than Travis Kelsey here. All right. Let's go to a few chats here before we get back to the list. DTrain44 says JCM or Kareem Hunt in the flex. So we just talked about JCM as a possible bust here. Kareem Hunt could be a bust also because his role is very touchdown dependent also. Now, we are not expecting Isaiah Pacheco to play in this game against the Bills. One thing you've been able to do against your Bills, Leone, is run the ball. And now I don't know that Kareem Hunt has enough juice to like take advantage of that. But Bills have been getting gashed pretty good on the run. What do you think about this one, Kareem Hunt or JCM this week?
Yeah, we have Hunt with a slightly higher projection here. Um, I'm a little bit worried that KC's maybe not the best team suited to take advantage of this matchup against the Bills and that they just go crazy, throw heavy, and maybe we actually see a bit more Brashard Smith than people think. So I might, on gut start JCM, but yeah, both of these backs are really going to be touchdown dependent.
When the Chiefs get around the goal line, it was already Kareem Hunt, and so if
Yeah.
you're in half PPR, non PPR, I think there's a little bit more of me that likes the touchdown stuff for Kareem Hunt, but yeah, certainly very close there between JCM and Hunt. Chemo Suave says, "What about Rico Dowdle?" So I don't know exactly what the question is here, but Rico Dowdle, if you guys have been following this stuff closely, the Panthers basically came out and said, we feel bad. We love Chuba, but Rico's been so much better, and he's going to be our feature back. I mean, they came out and said that in the media. You do not see NFL teams do that very much. So at this point, I'm pretty sold that we're going to see 65, maybe even 70% of the running back touches go to Rico Dowdle here in this game. They are playing the Packers, not the best possible matchup. And also, Chuba might play on some passing downs. But yeah, I think Rico is like a fine, another like RB2 in that range there. Any more Dowdle thoughts, Leone?
Just, he's been so good, like beyond what we could have even possibly hoped for that, in leagues where it's close between like him and JCM or Hunt that we're talking about, I probably want to side with Rico, even in a tough spot, just to kind of see what happens, with another week with him back in the starting spot.
Let's go to Pat R. Marinello says, should I start Brashard Smith or Travion Henderson? So Ramondre Stevenson is dealing with a toe injury. If Ramondre were to miss, I think it would be undoubtedly Travion. They have been bringing in some backs like off the street. But if Ramondre is going to play in this game and be fine, Travion might only play like 15 snaps. So what do you think about this one, Leone? You already mentioned thinking about Brashard Smith this week.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for the Mondre injury, concerns at all, I think I would say Brashard Smith. He has a double-digit target share in three of the last five. Obviously, pretty low floor, but I think that floor gets elevated with Pacheco out, and I'd have a tough time seeing them go crazy workhorse role with Kareem Hunt or giving Elijah Mitchell, super meaningful carries. So if he gets more base work and his target per route run is like kind of insane for KC. He's at a 47% target per route run. They're utilizing him while he's out there. He definitely gives the team a bit more of that speed upside, that element that Kareem Hunt just doesn't have. So especially if they fall behind on this game, I know they're small favorites. I think there's, a better upside case for Smith than Henderson, but obviously keep an eye on the injury news with Ramondre.
Yep. Last one before we get back to the list here. Trent Kimmel says, would you trade Woody Marks and Terry McLaurin for Tedero McMillan and Harold Fannin. This McLaurin stuff, man. I mean, he was out for a while. I was afraid he had like some sports hernia thing going on. Then he comes back, plays a pretty good game, a really good game actually, but it hurts his quad, and he's already been ruled out here for this week. So if you need wins now, which I'm sure a lot of people do, I'm totally fine just getting out from under Terry McLaurin here. But yeah, any thoughts on this trade, Leone?
Yeah, our trade calculator has it pretty close. A lot of that has to do with us just being high on Woody Marks rest of the season, but we have McMillan as kind of the clear best trade asset here. So I think I like the McMillan fan inside, unless you're really hurting at the running back spot.
All right, let's get back to the list. Player four who we are worried about this week is J.K. Dobbins, starting running back for the Denver Broncos. You see what's going on with Dobbins. RJ Harvey is a threat on base downs, not passing downs. So a lot of people thought this would go in, I think, in a different way than it's gone. J.K. Dobbins is the starter, but he's going to lose a little bit to RJ Harvey. And then on passing downs, it's going to be likely Tyler Batty. And now he has a really tough base matchup here against the Texans. So similar to JCM, if you're not going to catch passes, and J.K. Dobbins' target share is alarmingly low. If you're not going to catch passes and touchdowns are going to be tough to come by at Houston, you start to see how we can have a really low floor here on J.K. Dobbins. So any more Broncos backfield thoughts here, Leone, ahead of this game at Houston?
Yeah, I know, the Broncos are on a big winning streak, but they beat up on a lot of, subpar teams, subpar defenses. Dallas, Giants, Cincinnati are three of their high point totals on the season. Those are super favorable matchups. So yeah, a tough one against Houston. Harvey is coming off, his second highest amount of carries on the season, had the 40-yard touchdown run, scored twice. If there's a week for him to maybe make a dent into Dobbins, it might be this week, just coming off the really strong performance. And then even if he doesn't, like you said, the matchup isn't great for a back that's really going to be dependent on rushing efficiency.
Number three player to be worried about. Oh, this one's going to be controversial, Leone. It's going to be controversial. When you play for the Packers, you just never know when you can wake up one day and Jordan Love only drops back 22 times and everybody gets three targets and he throws to like literally 12 different guys. And so, yeah, Tucker Kraft obviously is an incredible player. Everybody saw it on Sunday night. Against this Carolina team, we could see a very run heavy approach. They are 13.5 point favorites here and a home game against the Panthers. And when we see very run heavy approaches from the Packers, sometimes you get games where guys don't even see three or four targets in an entire game. So obviously, if you have Tucker Kraft, you probably don't have a better option to sit him. But I do think the floor here is probably lower than people might realize on Tucker Kraft, just on volume alone. It's starting to get more crowded here in Green Bay. Leon, any thoughts on their spot against Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, we saw against Cincinnati, a weak team overall a few weeks ago. Kraft ends up getting there because he gets the touchdown, but literally only two targets in that game. He's got 3 games this season where he's had 4 targets or less because the team pass volume's down and because they spread it around. Coming off back-to-back games where he's put up 9 and 10 targets in spots where they've thrown a bit more than normal. I do think, we see a scale back in the volume, making him a bit more boomer bust. I do think he's like George Kittle-esque, where the efficiency for him is going to be so strong that he can maybe survive that. And
Yeah.
he's going to have these huge spike weeks. And in most formats, he's probably worth starting week in and week out just because you don't want to miss the ceiling when it happens with all tight ends having a somewhat low floor. But, the point of this segment is to show you, players that we wouldn't be shocked had a really, bust worthy game. And that there's definitely single digit point total, even sub 5 point potential for Kraft here.
Yeah. We've seen that throughout Kittle's career. He'll have like 30, 25, 30, and then like 4 and 1, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast when you're a really good blocker and you play on some of these teams that don't drop back a ton. All right. Let's get back to some chats. We are men of the people. Chaseg1119 says, should I start Tajee Spears or Aaron Jones? So I would consider both of these guys the passing back with some base work on their team. I expect both ends to be losing this week. Minnesota is playing Detroit and the Titans are playing the Chargers. I just think Aaron Jones is probably a better player. If you think JJ McCarthy is like the worst quarterback in the history of the NFL, then I could see this being Spears. Otherwise, I think it's probably Aaron Jones for me. Leonie, what do you think, Spears or Aaron Jones this week?
We have it projected really close, but I prefer Aaron Jones here, who comes back returning from injury, runs 47% route share, knocks Jordan Mason down to a 19% route share. Very nice to see immediately the pass game role go back his way. They've even hit him on some downfield targets, in the preseason and early on in the season. And this is a game where they could be down by a lot of points kind of quickly. It could get sped up here. So I think there's just a little bit more ceiling to the Aaron Jones side of things.
J Stock 24 says, I'm new to fantasy football. I just traded away Jameer Gibbs and Puka Nakua for Derrick Henry. How did I do? Well, J Stock,
Oh no.
welcome to the great game. And this is going to be a learning experience for you. I would prefer to have Gibbs by himself instead of Derrick Henry the rest of the season. And I definitely prefer to have Puka Nakua ahead of Derrick Henry for the rest of the season. So I think you lost this trade. However, don't let us disconcert you from having fun and playing the great game of fantasy football. EA Harrison 92 says, is Hollywood Brown droppable at this point? I think that's a fair question. I mean, he is what, fifth maybe on the target totem pole at this point? Marquise Brown, even when they had all these guys out, it's not like Marquise Brown was out there crushing. He had that one game where he had 16 targets, but other than that, it's not been great for Marquise Brown. So my first instinct, Leonie, is yeah, if you need to drop Marquise Brown, I'm okay with that. What do you think?
I think it's a very easy drop. There's some wide receivers now at this point of the year where if they haven't broken out, aren't clear starts. We were talking about Matthew Golden, even in our Slack chat. I'd rather have a running back stash that maybe you could get super lucky on with an injury in front of like a Keaton Mitchell type, or pick up a Brashard Smith this week, see how he performs with Isaiah Pacheco out. There's way more routes, I think, to those plays mattering, even though those guys are going to project for less points right now, than there are just a random week where it becomes very clear that Hollywood and Matthew Golden are starts.
Yes, by the way, breaking news into the show. Second straight day that Ramondre Stevenson is not practicing with this toe injury. So, to the person who asked the question about Travion earlier, this could be finally the chance for Travion. I don't want to say they're definitely going to make him give him 15 touches, but yeah, he's more likely to if Ramondre misses, obviously. D. Chim Richard says, Alec Pierce or JMO. Are we really here, Leone? Are we really here where we're comparing Jamison Williams to Alec Pierce? And I think Alec Pierce is a nice player. He's going to get a big contract this offseason that is going to surprise people. But God, Jamison Williams has to be it here, Leone. And I know it's been so bad. And all they're doing with Jamison Williams is running go routes. One thing I'll say on Jamison Williams, if you watch press conference this week, and shout out to Coach Speak Index, they tweeted this one. During the bye, Dan Campbell was asked, are there any players that you think maybe deserve more coming out of the bye, want to get them going? He didn't say his name explicitly, but he seemed to be clearly talking about Jamison Williams when he was answering this question. So that's a bit narrative-y. He said that before. I would go with JMO just because I don't have it in me to start Alec Pierce over JMO. But what do you think, Leone?
Yeah, I think it's Jamison Williams. I think the what it comes down to me, I mean, as good as the Colts have been, the team scoring upside, I think, for Detroit in this spot is a little bit higher than it is for the Colts in this spot. Colts, I believe, on the road at Pittsburgh, not playing in the dome, whereas you get Detroit home versus Minnesota. I'll give that edge there. And I think in terms of where the touchdowns come from, it's more likely Detroit, piles on and comes in the passing game. I will say Alec Pierce is on the By Leone model this week, kind of looks at players that have underperforming relative to their opportunities. Never a player I expected to see on there because I never thought he'd earn enough volume. But he's actually, running a ton of routes, especially since AD Mitchell has kind of, worn out his welcome a little bit. The route share since the bye week's been around 85% for Alec Pierce. This is a spot where they should have to throw a little bit more because it's, a tighter spread than they've seen, and they have been aggressive throwing. They've just been in such great game scripts. Pierce has an 8 out of 22.4, 2.4 yards per out run, hasn't scored yet. So I do think he's a sneaky start in some leagues, but end of the day, it's Jameson Williams versus Alec Pierce. I would be thinking of this more simply in terms of who was the player we were drafting in the fifth, sixth round coming into the season was Jameson Williams. You want to stick with him.
Last chat before we get back to our list here. Grad Alb 156 says, should I start DK Metcalf or Jalen Waddle? Jalen Waddle tonight as the alpha receiver for Tua Tagovailoa against a Ravens secondary, which has gotten much healthier here. This is a home game for Miami where they historically play better down there in the heat of Florida. Any thoughts on this one, Leone, DK Metcalf or Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, we've got Waddle a little bit ahead, and I do like that. The team pass volume should be a bit higher for Miami. We've seen Baltimore kind of inflate opponent plays because they've just been so efficient themselves on offense, especially in the Lamar games early in the season. It gives the other team a lot of chances on offense and playing from behind. Target share has been good for Waddle, whereas you get a really slow-paced Steelers team against a Colts team that might be a little bit more ball control because they might not get the crazy efficiency they've gotten, even if they throw a bit more in this spot. So I prefer Waddle.
All right, let's get back to our list here. We have reached the top of the list. Number two player who we're worried about their bust potential in week 9 is Jordan Addison. And this straight comes down to what do you think about JJ McCarthy? We have only seen JJ McCarthy for 2 games. He played horrifically for 7 quarters of his 8. The one good quarter came against the Bears. It also seemed like there was some soft benching going on with JJ McCarthy. In other words, he got cleared. Seems like he could have played, but they preferred Carson Wentz with one arm instead of JJ McCarthy. So that's kind of concerning for me also. Now, am I ready to say that JJ McCarthy sucks? He's never going to be good. He can't get Jordan Addison going. I'm not ready to say that, but it's at least a little bit concerning to me that JJ McCarthy could go out there and totally faceplant in a tough spot to play at Detroit. So, Leone, where are you at on JJ McCarthy right now, and how does that flow through to the receivers?
It's definitely concerning. I was quite bullish on Minnesota in the pass offense coming into this season. We had a lot of talk about in the ETR Slack, and I was kind of the optimistic one, thinking they might be conservative early, but they should be successful and then take the training wheels off as the season went along. That's not what happened early. Then you got an injury. So it's really tough. And the biggest problem for the pass catchers for the Vikings is the amount of dropbacks that are turning into pass attempts. Like they're not even calling dropbacks at a high rate with JJ McCarthy, but then when they are, he has taken sacks at an incredibly high rate. 22% in his game against Atlanta, 13% in his game against Chicago. He's also scrambling a lot. They're not turning, that's like Justin Fields level where you're concerned about the receivers. And I do think that additionally, some of the wide receiver production is going to swing back towards Justin Jefferson. I know Jordan Addison has played really well, but Justin Jefferson is such an alpha there. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely have my concerns here.
All right. And the number one player we are concerned about is one that doesn't bring me joy to say. However, when you're losing base work around the red zone to Samaje freaking Perine, I'm going to have some concerns. And we also have Joe Flacco with a shoulder injury here. And so, yeah, I get it. Chase Brown's been way more efficient lately. Joe Flacco has clearly helped the entire offense a ton and spread things out. And I'd probably start Chase Brown if I had him. But when you're losing some key work, 2 minute drill, 4 minute drill, you're also losing some stuff inside the 10-yard line to Samaje Perine. You're going to have a lower floor than I think people realize here. So, again, another guy on this list that I'd probably start if I had him. But I think the bust potential is there. Leone, why is Samaje Perine playing so much? This is ridiculous.
Some say this was foreseeable, but 4 straight weeks with Samaje Perine playing 40+% of snaps. Honestly, like you don't want Pirine taking this much work, but I think Brown's in a little bit better role for his skill set where he's not just getting pounded in the line over and over. And we've seen the efficiency return as a result. His 2 highest yards, 3 highest yards per carry game have come the last three games, not even close, after kind of, the tough start. Now, Joe Flacco has a lot to do with that. I think if Flacco starts, you do have some reason to be optimistic because the matchup against Chicago is so juicy, and this could be a shootout. We saw the shootout between Cincinnati and the Jets last week. Could see
Yeah,
another one this week where even with that split work, he's productive. But definitely worth noting that Brown ran hot on touchdowns last week, ran kind of hot on game flow. Generally getting 10, 11 carries and 2 to 3 targets is just going to be tough to get it done week in and week out.
indeed. All right. Got about 5 minutes here. We'll get to as many questions as we can. Emerald Scout says, I traded Dallas Goedert and Ashton Genty for Brock Bowers and Chase Brown. W or L? Well, this is going to come down to, is Brock Bowers healthy? And I know there's been some debate about that. Brock Bowers says that he is healthy as the Raiders come out of their bye here. If he is, I kind of like getting the Bowers side of this. I think he is the best player in the deal. But yeah, any thoughts on this one, Leone? Goddard and Genty for Bowers and Chase Brown?
Yeah, I like the Bowers side. I think it's a really sharp time to trade for Brock Bowers, where he's finally had multiple weeks off to rest from this knee injury. I don't know why he was trying to play through it before, but had one of the most incredible rookie tight end seasons we've ever seen last year, on top of being an elite tight end prospect, uh, a player that could make a huge difference over the second half of the year, despite floundering over the first half.
RJ from LA says, should I start Bam Knight or Jalen Warren? So Bam Knight has this incredible matchup against the Cowboys. And I do think he's going to play well ahead of Michael Carter. The problem with Bam Knight is it is possible if they get behind that we're going to see a lot of Amari DiMercato. So I think Jalen Warren here pretty easily, Leone, but not that Bam Knight's a terrible start. What do you think, Jalen Warren or Bam Knight?
No, we've got pretty favorable projection on Knight. It's just we really like Warren, who since coming back from the injury, especially 1 week removed from that, gets the lion's share of the carries for Pittsburgh, has been somewhat improving from the start of the season on his efficiency. He's a double-digit target share guy in a game that's got a decently high total this week. So yeah, do prefer Jalen Warren. Can never quite trust Arthur Smith, but just a better environment overall.
Pete Ulrich, 23, says, who do I start at tight end this weekend? Zach Ertz or TJ Hawkinson? Another JJ McCarthy
Hurts.
related question here. Now, Ertz is going to give you a lot of catch and fall stuff. He's not going to make big plays. Not that TJ Hawkins is going to make many big plays either, but Ertz's role is just like rock solid. Hawkinson, it would be Hawkinson for me if I had confidence in JJ McCarthy, but yeah, what do you think, Leone? Hawkinson or Ertz?
We've got Ertz here as the guy who's clearly projecting better, which is kind of crazy to say. Ertz just will not go away. A few years in a row now that we've just kind of expected him to go away, and he continues to be very fantasy relevant.
Yeah. The Great Rib says, I had a league mate use 100% of his fab on Tyrone Tracy this week. Is my boy chalked? I believe chalked, is what the youth are referring to as he's in trouble. Um, no, I think Tyrone Tracy is a good use of 100% of your fab budget. It depends how many teams are in your league, what else is out there. But Tyrone Tracy is, I think, a pretty good running back. He was in a disaster situation last year and still averaged 4.4 yards per carry, still caught 30 something balls. Situation this year is better just because of Jackson Dart. So I think Tyrone Tracy is worthy of the 100% fab dump. Um,
Yeah, I
but
think that Devin Singletary is not going to play a pretty big role here. It's going to be somewhat workhorse Tyrone Tracy. Shout out to my buddy Anthony Gullo in our home league who spent $82 a fab on Tyrone Tracy earlier in the year just to drop him so that I can pick him up and beat him in that. It's what fantasy is all about.
All right, last one from eMoney77. Should I start Sam Darnold, Dak Prescott, or Kyler Murray? Um, from a real life perspective, I mean, Dak and Darnold are playing at a different level than Kyler. The only argument you can make for Kyler would be the matchup against Dallas. But I think both Darnold and Dak have pretty good matchups as well. So I would be one of those guys for me. I would probably go Dak, considering both Pickens and Lamb are healthy. But what do you think, Leone? Darnold, Dak, or Kyler?
I think it's Dak. I mean, he just has the pass volume edge on these guys that they don't have. Like you mentioned, CeeDee Lamb healthy. He's got the weapons as well. It's a dome game. They've got a really high total at 28. It's a high game total altogether. These are the types of environments where you love to play Dak Prescott, where we can go back and forth. I'm going to side with him.
All right, me too. Let's go back to our list here just to do a quick recap. Our players that could underperform, where they might bust this week, include Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, running back. Commanders, without the pass down role, it's going to need to make big plays, going to need to score touchdowns. Not going to be easy against this Seattle defense. Number 5, Travis Kelce against a Bills team that has been very good against tight end. And Rashee Rice is stealing a lot of these goal line looks, red zone looks, short area looks where Kelce used to feast so hard. Number 4, J.K. Dobbins. Not really a factor in the passing game and losing a little bit of base work to RJ Harvey and has a tough matchup against the Texans. Tucker Kraft, awesome player, and role is fine. It's always with the Packers. How many dropbacks am I going to get from Jordan Love? And how flat is the target tree going to be? He has 7, 8, 9 guys he can throw to. And in some outcomes, you see Tucker Kraft, especially in a home game against the Panthers, he can get 2, 3, 4 targets in a game. Number 2, Jordan Addison, just on the J.J. McCarthy risk. If J.J. McCarthy is as bad as he's been in the NFL for 7 of the 8 quarters he's played so far, obviously it's a disaster for Jordan Addison. And the number 1 player to be worried about, Chase Brown, losing too much work to Samaje Perine and Joe Flacco, questionable due to his shoulder injury. All right. That is going to do it for a Week 9 edition of the Bleacher Report Fantasy Football Show. If you're serious about fantasy football, you can check us out at establishtherun.com. For Leone, for everyone behind the scenes at ETR and everyone behind the scenes at Bleacher Report, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.